do not think that we are worshiping the actual scrolls. That would become idolatry. Adonai gave us, we're going to see the bronze serpent that was lifted up, that was not to be worshipped. What happened is, by the time of the kings, the people still had that bronze serpent and they were worshiping it. And so it was destroyed, because what Adonai used to teach us a lesson became an idol. And even that which Adonai gives us to teach us to use, if we idolize it, if we make it to be in the same place as Adonai, then we are making it into an idol. We have seen that in our own selves, where growing up we idolized symbols and statues of different things, and definitely that is idolatry. But please do not worship the Torah Scrolls. We worship Adonai, who gave us his Torah, that is signified by the Torah Scrolls. So when I lift it up, I don't want you to worship it. I want you to say, this is the Torah that Adonai gave to me by the hand of Moshe. It's Adonai who gave. What's written here? Think of it. What's written here is the word of Adonai. And what's written here, Adonai told Moshe, write it down and give it to the people. Not only to the ones that were there, but remember, we keep saying this, to those that are even not there. So he gave it to us. I want every one of us to think, when we lift this Torah, what's written there is for me, not for them. It was for them at that time, but it's for me today. And this is the living Torah. And this is Yeshua, the word of Elohim. Well, let's go there to verse 17 of chapter 13, where our reading is Beshalach. When Pharaoh had the people go, Beshalach, send them out. When he told the people to go, Elohim did not take them through the land of the Philistines, which was a shorter route, so that the people, which was the nearest way, Elohim thought that the prospect of fighting would make the people lose heart and turn back to Egypt. Instead, Elohim led the people the roundabout way of the wilderness to the sea of reeds. Now, some of your Bibles say the Red Sea, and some of your Bibles say the Sea of Reeds. Well, is it the Red Sea or the Sea of Reeds? The Hebrew word is the Yam Suf. The Yam Suf. The word Yam is the word for sea, the word for the sea. And the word Yam in Hebrew is for a body of water. The word Yam means a body of water. Yamim is water. Yam is a body of water. Now, it doesn't mean an ocean like we would think of an ocean. It doesn't just mean a sea like we would think of the Mediterranean Sea or the Sea of Japan. We call Galilee the Sea of Galilee. But to most people, it's just a lake. Today, it's called Lake Kinneret. It's a lake. But the word Yam just means a body. In fact, the basin, it's called the Golden Sea. the bronze basin was called the Bronze Sea. And so anything that is a body of water is a yam in Hebrew. So we're not here talking about something that has to be very big, or it could be something that's very small. And Navajo Lake, we would call it Navajo Yam, Navajo Sea. T or C, truth or consequences. How many of you have ever been to the lake there? It's not a big lake, but I don't know if any of you would like to walk across it, be caught and it's really pretty skinny compared to a lot of other places around even New Mexico. For a lake, it's a small place. Even Cochiti Lake is considered a small lake. Those of you from some of these other places where Alabama or Arkansas, they have good lakes over there. But we don't have big lakes. But in Hebrew, there's still seas. There's still yam. And the yam suf, the word suf, is thought to mean reeds. The word reeds is a suf, but the word suf also means reddish. Reddish. Now, most reeds are brownish, but at certain parts they're also reddish. So I don't know if that combination was there. The Red Sea today proper is that whole area up to what we even call the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean is part of, according to Herodotus and some of the ancient geographers, part of what we would call the Red Sea. The Red Sea proper today also has two arms. The arm on the east side today is called the Gulf of Aqaba. The arm on the west side is called the Gulf of Suez. In fact, today, the Suez Canal goes from the bottom of, or the top of the western arm all the way up to the Mediterranean Sea. And in modern times, actually from the time of the pharaohs, they were trying to make canals to connect it. They were never able to. But today, because of modern technology, we've been able to make a canal. And I still remember from even elementary days talking about the building of Suez Canal. And today, all the different situations of the building of the Suez Canal and the ships that go up and down the Suez Canal today. And so one of the things that we have to do, and we're not going to do this today because we would leave this for a Wednesday night question, because we have maps, and on Wednesday night we could dialogue, you could ask questions, and we could answer, and we could go different things. We're not going to talk about which is the Yam Suf, because there's 5 different theories on where the crossing took place. There's the traditional theory, and then there's several others on the western arm of the Red Sea, and there's one on the eastern arm, or 2 on the eastern arm. Actually, there's 6 theories on where the crossing was. So there's much confusion of this, and so in this teaching today, we're not going to deal with that, but I would encourage you, if you want to know more about, join us on a Wednesday night, and then you could ask a question on that, and we could deal with that in an easier manner. But the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, or, by the way, the Red Sea proper, the Red Sea proper, any part of the Red Sea with the two arms that has salt water, cannot be the Sea of Reeds, because reeds do not grow on salt water. You have to have fresh water for reeds to grow. So if it is the Sea of Reeds, it definitely cannot be any of the arms of the Red Sea proper that go up on both sides of what is called the Sinai Peninsula today. It cannot be any of those. So Adonai, so that they wouldn't go straight from Egypt to Israel, which is a fairly straight line. Today, you could drive from Cairo to Gaza, which is the frontier of southwest Israel right there. You could drive it in 12 hours. I've driven it in 12 hours. And so in those days, that would have just taken about a month or so. Think of it. Leave Egypt in a month, you're in Israel. Well, the problem is that the Philistines and Amalekites and other groups were there, and they would have raiding parties. And so Adonai decided, instead of taking them by the Philistines, which were the main and the biggest group of people at the time, Adonai would take them the roundabout way. The roundabout way. Now think of that idea, the roundabout way. It's easier, as the crow flies from here to here. But why did Adonai, instead of through here, takes them a roundabout way? I can't understand this, because Adonai says, I don't want to take them through the Philistine way, because they'll get into war, they'll get into all these things. Adonai already knows what he's going to do. Remember, those whom he predestined, he foreknew. He knows all the struggles that they're going to go through. He knows everything about the water situation. He knows the food situation. He knows everything about what we're going to go to get to Sinai. Our destination is Sinai. And he knows that going this way is not going to make it, but going the roundabout way. How many times has Adonai taken you the roundabout way? Our flesh, as the crow flies, this is my goal. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. And Adonai changes our plans and makes us go the roundabout way. Now, the roundabout way is going to have its own struggles. The roundabout way is going to kind of wake us up. The roundabout way is going to allow us to think more, because it's a longer process. We want, as we said many times, we want that fast food type mentality. Even the express lane at McDonald's is too slow for me nowadays. It's too slow. That was about a month ago. I haven't had a Big Mac for 2 months. But it's the slow way. And it's where we learn things the slow way. Kind of like if you get a piece of meat and put it in the crock pot and put it at low, and it takes all day to cook that stew or what you're cooking, then it's tender. And how many know that Adonai wants to tenderize us? Most of us are not tender people, right? We're not tenders. We tend to be very rough and tough, and we're hard. But Adonai wants to tenderize us. And so he wants to slow cook us. He wants to slow cook us. And so that we would be perfect, mature. And in a sense, this is what I see Adonai is doing here. And I see that if we would have gone here, we would have been discouraged and just gone back. But going slowly and attacking this problem first, that problem first, all these little problems that have really, we're going to see, have worked up to big problems because of the grumbling. But yet Adonai has a way of doing things. Always remember the roundabout way. If you ever catch yourself in a situation, what's going on? Is it possible that Adonai is taking me the roundabout way? We'll still get to the same destination. The destination is sure. The promised land. And every one of us has, even now, our own little promised lands that Adonai has this for you. You know, young people are the ones that Adonai, I think, likes to take the roundabout way. Because right away there, I'm gonna do this, and we're so sure of what we're gonna do this. After 30, 40 years, 50 years, we say, you know what? Now I could see that, hey, Adonai had a plan for me. I tried missing. I'm thankful I didn't go the straight way, as the crow flies, but I took the roundabout way. And then we could start seeing, you know what? Adonai is wiser than me. How many of you know that? How many of you don't know that? One? Okay. And they left fully armed. Verse 19, Moshe took with him the bones of Yosef. Remember, Yosef says, when you guys leave, you will go. Because Adonai had promised it. Yosef had faith. And Joseph's faith to take his body, his bones, Moshe, another 400 some years later, has him. And they leave Rameses. Rameses is the place that they left. By the way, Rameses is the name that that little town was known after the time of Moses. So a lot of people say, well, wait a second. There was no Rameses at the time. But like in many places, names, the name of Albuquerque is a name that only started in 1706, right around there. 1706 but that's not the name of this place. Anybody know the real name of Albuquerque? Atrisco. Atrisco is this place. And again, our ancestors were in Atrisco way before. They were in Atrisco from the early 1600s, late 1500s, and the 1590s. They already had haciendas in Atrisco. But today we call it Albuquerque. So today when we say when they came to Albuquerque. Well, it wasn't Albuquerque then. It was Atrisco. And the same thing, that happens with so many places. And so a lot of people have confusion. Well, it says Rameses there, but Rameses didn't live until another, 800 years later. And so sometimes there's confusion about that, but they took off from Rameses, and the first town or the first place they went in verse 20 was the town of Sukkot, or the place of tents. And they traveled, and this is the first time they camped out. This is their first camping, their first tenting. And they moved on and encamped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And so they took off. Now, again, although we're not going to discuss today the different theories, but we will look at the exodus out of Egypt in what we would call the traditional. And many of us are still looking at the traditional, what has been taught since early centuries as the official, at this point, exodus out of Egypt. With all the different places there. Remember, the first 3 days and then the next 3 days are on both sides of the sea, the Yam Suf. So for the first week, we are in the area from Rameses to right over on the other side of the Yam Suf, which from reading an actual just reading of Exodus, it's just right there, just coming out of Egypt in the first 3 days, the next 3 days on both sides. So we're not looking at, crossing the whole Sinai and going to all the different other sides. Just a clear reading of Exodus gives you that idea that this is happening within days. By the way, verse 21 and 23 gives us a very important kind of a little summary, a little parentheses of what Adonai does. Notice that Yahweh went before them by day in the form of a pillar of cloud to show them the way, and by night in the form of a pillar of fire to give them light. Now it says Yahweh went before them as. Well, one of the things that from, I guess, our messianic point of view, that our Jewish brethren do not share with the messianic and apostolic faith is that Yahweh is a plurality. Yahweh is a plurality, but he's a singular plurality. Now that's an oxymoron, right? A singular plurality. You can't be single and plural at the same time. You are either one or the other. Just like you can't be male and female at the same time, right? It's impossible. Yet some people think they are today. But you can't be. There's no such thing as a gallo gallina. There's no such thing as a rooster hen. That's the word in Spanish, by the way, a rooster hen. There's no such thing as a rooster hen. And so one of the things that we know is that you can't be one and you can't be plural at the same time. But even from the first verse of the scriptures we've said, in the beginning Elohim, he created. In the beginning, Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et. In the beginning, Elohim, plural. Remember, Elohim is plural. The word Elohim, it's not a singular noun, it's a plural noun. But the verb there, bara, is a singular, third person singular. He created. In the Shema, Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh our Elohim, plural. Yahweh is echad, Yahweh is one. How could a plural be one? Of course, Yeshua ties it all when he says, I and the Father are echad. I and the Father. Every time it talks about the angel of Elohim or the angel of Yahweh, it is Yeshua in his pre-incarnate form. When Yahweh appeared to Moshe as the fire of the burning bush, all those appearances in different forms, it is Yeshua in his pre-incarnate form. So when it says here that Yahweh went before, remember, Yahweh's throne is in heaven, the Father's throne is in heaven. But every appearance of Yahweh on earth, it is Yeshua at the same time. He is echad with the Father. And it is Yeshua. When it says Yahweh came down with two messengers, two angels, and he comes down and he walks. And all of a sudden, we saw he appears before Abraham, and Abraham's taking his siesta, and all of a sudden he opens his eyes, and there's Yahweh and two angels. And he addresses him as Yahweh. Yahweh addresses him as who he is. We know it is Yahweh. But we believe that is the pre-incarnate Yeshua. In fact, Yahweh there sits with Abraham and eats with Abraham, and Abraham gives him a calf that he kills, that they slaughter for food, and gives him some curds, or in Spanish we call this cuajada, some curds, some dairy and meat. And Yahweh eats the dairy and the meat there in front of Abraham, and the two messengers, the two angels, eat with Abraham. Think of it. That's Yeshua in his pre-incarnate form. That's the word of Elohim, the angel, the messenger of Elohim, the messenger of Yahweh is Yeshua. So when it says here, Yeshua went, when it says Yahweh went before them by day in the form of cloud. So on the day, now we need to also know a little bit about the desert. We know that the desert is hot, but we also know that the desert is cold. In the day, the desert, and that Sinai desert is hot. It is very hot. It is just like any, it is very, very hot. And the sun, the hotter a desert is, the more water you need, the more rest you need, the more shelter you need. And so what Adonai does is in the day, he appears as a cloud. And to give you that rest. When I used to drive to between here and LA when I was going to college over there, and I used to have a 64 Chevy. And the 64 Chevy had, of course, in those days, no air conditioner. And so I had to go with my windows down. And right away, you pass Needles, and between Needles and Barstow, you know that road. Oh, man, that is so hot with no air conditioner. And, oh, man, you'd be driving out, and you're praying for a cloud. And when a cloud came, whew, you get a little respite. Just a little, not much. But can you imagine? Over 1 million people, and Adonai has this cloud in the day. Adonai is the cloud in the day. And with cloud, you get what? Respite. And if a wind blows, it's not as hot as it would be without the cloud. But at night, the desert is very hot. It's very cold. It's freezing cold out there. And at night, Adonai was this pillar of fire. Just like the heaters now in winter, especially if it's snowing outside, and you're going to Costco, and it's outside, and you're shivering. And as soon as you hit that door, what happens? They have those nice little heaters nowadays that as soon as you go in, you could feel the heat. Think of it. Adonai was a pillar that brought heat to our people at night. And it brought light. By the way, what was the purpose of this? So that we could travel day and night. Now think of it. In fact, watch what it says there in verse, 23? Thus, they could continue their march by day and by night. The pillar of cloud never failed to go before the people during the day, nor the pillar of fire during the night. So, at this point, now this isn't the whole journey. But at this point, leaving Egypt, remember, we had to skedaddle real fast. You know, we had to exit stage right. If we're looking, if we're looking north, we had to exit stage right fast. And so we traveled for the first 3 days, day and night. And in the day, the pillar of fire. In the day, the cloud. At night, the pillar of fire. Verse 1. Yahweh spoke to Moshe and he said, tell the sons of Israel to turn back and pitch camp in front of Pi Harioth between Migdal and the sea, facing Baal Zephon. So right away from a reading, we see that we leave Egypt and we have to travel day and night for the first 3 days. And right away in that little area, we are before the sea. We don't have to travel from Egypt for a whole month across the Sinai or up or north. We don't have to travel for a long time before we cross the sea. That's one of the problems I have with those other theories. Just from reading the text, you see that you leave Egypt and now you camp. You are at Succoth, the first from Rameses to Succoth, and immediately you are before the sea, and Adonai says, turn back. So we're already getting into the wilderness. But Adonai tells us to turn back and then get in front of the sea. Get in front of this giant lake. Get in front of this body of water. And so there we're stuck, which to most tacticians, this is the worst tactic you could do. Now, remember, Adonai does things his way. And there is a purpose for Adonai doing things his way. Why is this man born blind, they asked Yeshua. Because he sinned? Because his parents sinned? No, Yeshua says, this man was born blind to show the glory of Adonai. And Adonai healed him. Yeshua healed him for his glory. You know, Adonai allows things in our life for his glory. For his glory. Now, poor man, did Adonai say, I'm going to make this man blind? No, Adonai wants to give glory to himself. And this man was allowed to be blind. Remember, one of the most important aspects of who we are, and just think of yourself, who I am. I literally, am just a lump of clay. Think of yourself. Every one of us is a lump of clay, right? Some of us are a little lighter clay. Some of us are a little darker clay. But we're clay. And he's the potter. He makes us the way we are. The way I am, the way my face is, the way your face is. How tall I am. How we are. With the exception of the panza. Adonai has nothing to do with panzas. That's us. Right? But he gave us a panza, but not a big one. How we are, who we are, is just a lump of clay. And Adonai fashions us. And he makes us how he wants us to be. We should not be so full of ourselves that we think that we have made ourselves, that we are who we are. No. We must be humble. Humility starts with the idea of knowing that he is sovereign and I'm just a lump of clay. He's the potter, I'm the clay. And so if we really understand that, that is basic to Hebraic thought. Then that man born blind, to Adonai show his glory, to make sure when Yeshua says, be healed. And Yeshua healed the man. That family, that man, he was so overjoyed, he was giving glory to who? To Adonai. And Yeshua's stature as the son of Elohim, as Messiah grew. And Adonai received glory, and Yeshua received glory because of a man born blind. We don't know what every situation is, everything that happens in our lives. Adonai is in control. Nothing happens, even death. No death happens just because it happens. Adonai knows the timing. He knows who should go first, who should go next. He has it in control because the survivors are the ones that Adonai is working, and he uses every situation for his glory in our lives with our clay. And when it's time, he'll tell this lump of clay that has been built into a pot for his glory and for his use, fit for the master's use. He'll say, it's time to come home so I could put you on my shelf. And every one of us has a home in a place, a dwelling place in his home. He's sovereign. And so over here, one of the things that we see is that the master tactician says, I want you to come here. I want you to turn around. Come, not the way, that way, not this way, but I want you to come here. Not the way you think, Moses. Because remember, Moses just wanted to go to the wilderness. In fact, he told him, we want to go 3 days into the wilderness. And they're already approaching the wilderness. Adonai says, turn back. Turn back. Why turn back? For his glory, as we're going to see. And I'm taking too much time. We've got a lot of way to go. And so Adonai made the heart of Pharaoh stubborn. Verse 4, but I shall win glory for myself at the expense of Pharaoh and his army. And they will learn that I am Yahweh, as the Israelites did. So, as Adonai showed Israel, he's Yahweh, he's going to show this to them. Well, when Pharaoh heard what had happened, he was probably thinking, oh, that Moses. Oh, that Moses. What kind of a, prince of Egypt was he? He doesn't even know the first thing about, did he forget his military training as a prince of Egypt? We don't do things that way. He's leading them the wrong way. It wasn't Moses that was leading them. It was Adonai that was leading them. And so Pharaoh said, hey, this is easy pickings. We'll get them now. They're against the wall called a sea. The sea was a wall. A definite wall. They can't go this way. They can't go that way. They can't go back. And there's a wall in front of them. And for the enemy, that's the best place to have your enemy, against the wall, pinned down. And so they pursue. Verse 10, as Pharaoh approached, the sons of Israel looked around. They were the Egyptians. they were terrified and they cried out to Yahweh. And they said to Moses, right? This is, again, you'll see this many times. The people cry out to Yahweh. But since Moshe is the leader, the spokesman, they come. Were there no graves in Egypt? Plenty of graves in Egypt. Were there no graves in Egypt that you should bring us here so we could die in the desert? The grumbling starts. And for the next 40 years, Moshe had to contend, listen to the grumbling of the people. 40 years. And by the way, Moshe, as we're going to see next year, Moshe, as we're going to see, did not go into the promised land. He was disciplined not going into the promised land because he endured 40 years of being a good guy and standing for the people, interceding for the people, coming to Adonai, Father, forgive him. Finally, he had enough, and instead of doing what Adonai says, he struck the rock, which Adonai said, do not do, and all of a sudden, Adonai answered the prayer of Moses, but disciplined Moses because after 40 years of listening to grumbling, he couldn't take it no more. And he blew it. And Adonai disciplined him for that. But from now on, for the next 40 years, in Israel time, grumbling, grumbling, grumbling. About this, about that. We're going to see several of them if we get to them today. Let's go down there. I like this verse, verse 13. Moshe answered the people, have no fear, stand firm, and you will see what Yahweh will do to Yeshua you, to save you today. Now watch this, underline this. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. If you cry out to Adonai, Adonai will bless you. He will be your guard, and he will be the one to come against your enemies. We don't even have to come against them. Adonai is our fortress. He's our buckler. He's our shield. He's our sword. He's our everything. All we have to do is stand back and see the power of Yahweh. Yahweh said to Moshe, why do you cry to me? Tell the sons of Israel to march on. The sons of Israel walked through the sea on dry ground. For my part, I will make the Egyptians so stubborn. I shall win glory for myself at the expense of Pharaoh, his chariots, his horsemen. When I have won glory for myself at the expense of Pharaoh, the Egyptians will learn that I am Yahweh. Then the angel of Elohim, who marched in front, look at that. Who what? Remember a little while ago it says, Yahweh marched in front? It said Yahweh marched in front, right? It says the angel of Elohim who marched in front. That means that, if you know a syllogism, that if Yahweh marched in front of them, and the angel of Elohim marched in front of them, then Yahweh and the angel of Elohim are echad. They're the same one. And so we see that. And by the way, every time you see that, Yahweh said this, then all of a sudden, the angel of Yahweh, which makes them to the same one. Then the angel of Elohim who marched in front of the army of Israel changed station and moved to the rear. The pillar of cloud changed station from the front to the rear and remained there. It came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. The cloud was dark and the night passed, and the armies drawing no closer for the whole night. Moses stretched out his hand to the sea. Yahweh drove back the sea with a strong easterly wind all night, and he made the land of the sea. So all of a sudden, as soon as they leave Egypt, they cross the sea. That's one of the main points I want. As soon as they leave Egypt, they cross the sea. And all night, that easterly wind started in the west, going east, just went through that body of water, the Yam Suf, and all of a sudden it parted. And throughout the night, as he held his staff, and the waters parted and dried the ground. The ground was dry, and in the morning, Israel passed. And as Israel passed, all of a sudden, when the Egyptians came, Adonai returned there in verse 27, the sea. That day, verse 30, Yahweh rescued Israel. By the way, the word rescue is Yeshua also. From the Egyptians, and they were lying dead on the shore. By the way, if you read accounts that hundreds of bones and chariot wheels and bones of horses and all kinds of stuff have been found under one of the arms of the Red Sea, please take that with a grain of salt. Now, there's all kinds of reports. I always hear all these sensationalist report, we found hundreds of bones of the Egyptian army and their arms and their chariots under there. After all these years, those would not be there. We don't even know if there's pictures of chariot wheels in water, or what is called chariot wheels. One archaeologist who is a marine archaeologist says that one of the chariot wheels that supposedly is a picture of is not a chariot wheel, but is the steering wheel, the helm of a ferry boat from the 20s. And it was called a chariot wheel. And, those of you that have, had some helms look like chariot wheels. But be careful, because we have supposed pictures and all kinds of stuff, but there's no archaeology to them. It's hearsay. We don't know where the pictures were taken, by who was taking them. No diver has. In fact, recently a new dive team went down there and nothing was found, supposedly, where things were found. So be careful with some of these new theories. Not saying that they're wrong, but just be careful. But definitely, that day the sea returned and the fleeing Egyptians, and caught in the middle, that day Yahweh rescued. And it says there that the bodies, by the way, and the Egyptians lying dead on the what? On the shore. And so as the sea came up and they drowned, and their bodies were washed to the shore. And at that point, Moshe and the sons of Israel sang this song in honor of Yahweh. Yahweh I sing, he covered himself in glory. He covered himself in glory. Ga'o ga'a. To be covered in glory. Ga'o ga'a. To have glory as a covering. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. Yah is my strength, my song. He has become my Yeshua. He has become my what? Salvation. And the word salvation there is where we get the word Yeshua, Yasha. By the way, here's where we find the word Yahweh in its poetic form. You only find Yah as a poetic form, or with other words do you contract it. And this is the contract form of Yahweh. And the first syllable of the Hebrew word Yahweh, the Hebrew word Yahweh, the biblical word Yahweh. And so Yah is my strength and my salvation. By the way, Moshe and all of Israel until the Babylonian captivity mentioned the name of Yahweh. And today there are some rabbinic superstitions, and it is a superstition not to mention the name. But Moshe mentioned it. He never said, Hashem is my strength. He never said, the Lord is my strength. He said, what? Yah is my strength and my song. This is my Elohim. I praise him. And so all of a sudden he turns into a song. This is one of the songs of Moses. And remember in the book of Revelation, what are they singing? The song of Moses. Because as Adonai delivered us, delivered our people, delivered every descendant of Israel, here, this is the major event in the history of Israel. This is the greatest miracle in the history of Israel. And of course, Yeshua, salvation, is the greatest event in the history of the world for all of mankind. But there's still one more coming. That's our deliverance in the last days. And in the last days, in the book of Revelation, when the armies of that anti-Messiah and the armies of the beast are all of a sudden, Adonai is going to deliver us. And the song of Moses, Yah is my strength and my song. He has become my Yeshua Teinu, my salvation. And so there's one more coming. 2 have passed already, the greatest Yeshua. But let me tell you, for those that will be living at that time, great exodus, great salvation coming. At the end, verse 17, you will bring them to plant them on the mountain that's your own place, and the dwelling of Yahweh, the sanctuary, Yahweh prepared by his own hands. Yahweh will be king forever. This is talking about our eternal home. Because remember, the sanctuary that Moshe will make at this point is made by man. But that's a copy of the one made in heaven that Adonai made with his own hands. And so over here, it's promising us that place which is your dwelling, and it's in the heavens now, but in that day, from heaven comes, and it's going to come down in the new Jerusalem. And all of a sudden, in this earth, we are going to be there. Verse 20, Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took up the timbrel, and all the women followed her with timbrels dancing, and Miriam led them in this refrain. Shiru le Yahweh, go Ega'a Ra Chavru Rama Bayam. He said, what? Sing to Yahweh. He has covered himself in glory. Horse and rider, he's thrown into the sea. And Miriam took up the timbrel. This is the timbrel. This is the size of the tambourines in Israel. How many of you have tambourines next to you? Lift them up. Just lift them up, and you could shake them now. Go ahead and go do a little shake there of your tambourine. In Scripture, the women were the ones that did the timbrels. The only thing different is that the timbrels in biblical times did not have jingles. There was timbrels without jingles. Today we have jingles on our timbrels. But in those days, this is a timbrel without jingles. And so in biblical times, the women were the ones that did So if any of you women want to get a timbrel, timbrels, but again, they didn't have, did I say jingles? Timbrels. Yeah, timbrels without jingles. So this is, by the way, when you look at, I have a PowerPoint called Women in Drums. And in biblical times, I found all kinds of verses where women used drums. But I don't have one verse where a man used the drum. Now, I have hundreds of pictures, and there's hundreds of pictures out there. You should see at the Israel Museum, the statues of women with timbrels. And I have all kinds of pictures of statues and pictures of pictures with women in timbrels and drums that big, but not one of a man. And so it seems that the women were the ones that did the drumming, and they usually keep the beat at home anyway, right? Now, they started dancing. Moses made Israel move from the camp at the Sea of Reeds. They crossed the sea, and all of a sudden they camped at the Sea of Reeds in the wilderness of Shur, where they traveled for 3 days without finding water. When they reached bitter Marah, but the water there was so bitter they could not drink it. That's why the place is called Marah. And the people grumbled, grumbling again, at Moses, what are we to drink? Moses appealed to Yahweh, and Yahweh pointed out some wood to him. Moses threw it in the water, and the water was sweetened. There it was that he charged them. Watch this. There it was that he charged them with mishpatim and hukim. There he put them to the test. So as soon as they start grumbling, Adonai made the water sweet. Remember, here we were besides the sea, and he opened the sea. Now, the water's so bitter. We want water. We want water. Are we there yet? Sounds like some of our children, right? Whew. Boy, man, that's the way Kendra was. Kendra's not here today, so don't tell her I said this. Zach, Ariel, Lindsay, they were okay, but Kendra, are we there yet? I want water. I want water. Don't tell her I said that. This private between us. Okay. I don't think Kendra's watching on YouTube, so. And he gave him mishpatim and hukim. Think of it. There he started giving us some laws. Because a people that live have to have laws. There have to be, we have laws that, and in every home has its own laws. Every congregation has laws. Every city, we are a people of law. Law and order. The rule of law is an important factor in all civilized humanity. And Adonai gave them laws here. Remember, the Torah is not the law. The Torah is the instruction, but in the instruction, in the doctrine, the faith that we believe in, there are laws. And we must abide by those laws. And Adonai gave it to them right there, and he put them to the test. Can you imagine giving a class with laws? Okay, and we're going to have a test. If you listen carefully to the voice of Yahweh, your Elohim, and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his command and keep his statutes, his mishpatim, I shall inflict none of the evils, none of the diseases that I inflicted on the Egyptians. For I, Yahweh, am your healing. Ani Yahweh Rapha in Hebrew. Ani Yahweh Rapha. Here's where we get the name Yahweh Rapha. Adonai's name is associated with different things. Here, his name is associated with healing. The word Rapha is the Hebrew word for a physician. If you go to Israel today and you get sick, you need a Rapha. Today we use the term doctor, but the word doctor does not mean physician. A doctor is not a physician. A doctor is a teacher. The word doctor is the Latin word for the Hebrew word rabbi. And that's why a lot of people have a lot of confusion on a lot of those things. But the word Rapha is the Hebrew word for a physician. So he's our great physician. He's our Rapha. From there they set out again to Elam. And again, they reached the wilderness of Sin between Elam and Sinai. So now they're at a halfway point before getting to Sinai. Now, remember, from our point of view, it's out of Egypt, crossing the sea. Now is the long journey. 3 months. It's going to take 3 months to get from the crossing of the sea, with the exception of the first 6 days, to Sinai. We're going to see that it takes on the 3rd month to the day. And we kind of think that means 90 days, right? When it says on the 3rd month to the day. And some people say, well, it's 60 days, but it's probably 90 days. And so 3 days to cross the sea, from the sea to Sinai, 90 days. That's why, the traditional method is the closest. Verse 4, then Yahweh said to Moshe, now I will rain down bread from heaven. Each of the people are to go out and gather a day's portion. I propose to test them in this way to see whether they follow my law, my hukim, or not. On the 6th day, when they prepare what they have brought in, this will be as twice as much as the daily gathering. So they're complaining about water. They're complaining about food. They don't have bread. And Adonai says, I'm going to give them some bread from heaven. Now, Adonai is preparing at this point for us to go back to the default week. There is a default week, creation week. That's the default week. The default week is from Yom Rishon, Yom Echad, the first day, to Yom Shabbat, the day of the Sabbath. And Adam followed the day of the Sabbath. Everyone followed the day of the Sabbath. Abraham followed the Sabbath. He was a Torah keeper, so he followed the Sabbath. But when we were in Egypt for 430 years, we did not have Sabbath. Probably at the first we did, and then when we became slaves, no more Sabbath. And so we forgot about the Sabbath for those probably last 200 and some years. We didn't have the Sabbath. We were slaves. We had to work 7 days a week. But the Sabbath is Adonai's default week. You work 6 days, and then you rest on the Sabbath. Adonai is going to give us the Sabbath at Sinai. But on the way to Sinai, he gives us some mishpatim and hukim, some laws, ordinances, statutes. One of those is the reinstitution of the Sabbath. Right away. And it's kind of like, before I give you the law, let me give you the law. And so he gives us the Sabbath here. We will pick manna up for 6 days. And on the 6th day, we will have double to pick up. We'll pick up double so that will last on the seventh day. And Adonai will receive again the glory. Verse 16, chapter 16, verse 22 to 30 talks about that. Again, they complain for more water, verse 17, and Adonai gives them water from the rock in chapter 17. One of the other verses that I want to look before we close here is chapter 17, verse 15. After they had the Amalekites came and had a little encounter with Israel, and Adonai said to put the staff of Moses up, and as Moses had his hands, they were winning, but when it put him down, it says there that Aaron and Hur went up and they held his arms up, and all of a sudden they won. In verse 15 it says, Yahweh said to Moshe, write this action down in a scroll to keep the memory of it, and say to Joshua's hearing that I will wipe out the memory of Amalek from the heavens. Moshe built an altar and named it Yahweh Nisi, because he said, lay hold of the banner of Yahweh. Yahweh is at war with Amalek forever. And so here we get a second name. We saw Yahweh Rapha. Now Moshe builds an altar, and on that altar he calls it Yahweh Nisi. Nisi is the word for a banner. And so Yahweh is our banner. And from biblical times, the idea of what people would call a coat of arms or crests or banners, banners have always been part. Every tribe has a banner. And around the Ark of the Covenant, everyone had their standard, their banner, their Nisi. And the Nisi is who you are as a family. Many of you know your family coat of arms. The Otero coat of arms is a red shield with crosses, all 8 crosses all the way around. On a blue background, there is a castle, and it's a tower, and it's a watchtower. And the word Otero is the Hebrew word for a watchtower. And so that's from Lamentations, where it says, de nuestros oteros oterábamos. From our watchtowers, we watched. So to be a watchman, have a watchtower, is the Hebrew word sud, is in Spanish it's called an otero. De nuestros oteros, from our oteros we oteroed for the enemy to come. And so from here, he's our banner. He's the one that we look to as our standard. And when the enemy is coming and just raising up the flag, the banner, the Nisi, is a great help. In America, we have the Star Spangled Banner. And every time we sing the Star Spangled Banner, again, we stand in honor of even that those first battles that were fought, and in honor of our people, and especially the fallen. That's why I am totally against anyone who takes a knee at the Star Spangled Banner. It's a dishonor, especially to the men and women that have died for it. I believe they should be taking a knee to Yahweh instead of, they're kind of topsy-turvy. They're opposite. Están todos trocados. And let's go ahead and close there. There's so much. Oh, no, that's it. Chapter 18 is next week. Itro. Let's stand. Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have. I wish we could spend more time in there's so much, Father. There's so much meat. Father, there's so much meat in your Torah. And we could indulge in it all day long, Father, and still not have enough time. And bless what we have studied and allow us to learn and lessons. Every one of these has lessons for us for today. Yevarechecha Yahweh vayishmerecha. Air Yahweh panav elecha vichunecha. Asa Yahweh panav elecha. Vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day.